What's up everyone, Orion here, and I just wrapped up my first ever playthrough of The Last of Us Part 2, and in today's video you're going to hear my final thoughts and review on the game, and I have a lot to talk about here in this video. So if you watched the finale of my full playthrough series here on the channel, you saw my first initial impressions, 25 minutes worth of those impressions, right after beating the game when my emotions were high. And after taking a break from the game and really thinking about it and revisiting portions of the game, a lot of my thoughts have changed. And I realized in that time just how perfect and purposeful this narrative really was. So I hope you all really enjoy this review. I spent a lot of time editing this and I really like the format and the way this video turned out. You'll see a lot of clips. You'll see a lot of talk about different set pieces and some of my favorite parts of the game. And if you're coming here outside of my full playthrough series, you can check out my full playthrough of both The Last of Us Part 1 and The Last of Us Part 2 here on the Gamerability 2 YouTube channel. I will link them both down in the description below, especially if you want to go back and watch the finale, the last 25 minutes, to see my first initial impressions and thoughts right after beating the game. If you get some enjoyment out of this video, drop a like. It really helps the channel, and subscribe for plenty more gaming content here on the Gamerability 2 YouTube channel. So without further ado, let's get on right into it. I spent some time, I really thought about this game, and I revisited some of the portions of the game and played some of the portions of the game again. And all I'm gonna say right now is this game is a masterpiece. This game is a 10 plus out of 10. And I know some of you are thinking, well, Ryan, you gave it a 10 plus out of 10 as a score? You seem to really dislike 5 hours of this game, and it had one of your least favorite missions of all time in a climax of a video game. And one of those holds true. And I will talk about that climax mission and how that still is one of my least favorite missions. But even despite that, this game is a masterpiece. This game is 10 out of 10. It is a story that shows the path of revenge is the easier path. But the path to forgiveness, although it is the hardest path always, the path of forgiveness is the only way to truly move on. And that is what they captured in this video game with perfection. So I will talk a lot more about this later. One thing I will say, a lot of time has passed. I spent a lot of time thinking about this game, and I feel like I had more to say. And this video game is a masterpiece. This series, The Last of Us Part 1 and The Last of Us Part 2, will go down in history as some of my favorite games of all time. There are very few games that I would rate as a 10 plus out of 10. Baldur's Gate 3 is on that list. The Last of Us Part 1 is on that list. Red Dead Redemption 2 is on that list. God of War Ragnarok on that list. And you know what else is on that list? The Last of Us Part 2. Despite, if you watch my playthrough, you know how many different emotions I went through in this video game. That is the beauty of the writers at Naughty Dog. They told the story they wanted to tell, and they told that story to perfection. Because I don't think there's ever been a game I've played where I felt that emotional, where I was that immersed into a character as Ellie. I was so immersed. I really felt what she was going through. And after what happened to Joel, I was so frustrated. But that is what they wanted you to feel. The way they told the story, everything was purposeful. Every single mission had a purpose. Even the missions as Abby had a purpose. And it wasn't till I stepped away and really started to appreciate those missions. But this game is going down as one of my favorite games of all time. And I would even say that Naughty Dog is one of the best studios at telling a narrative. Their ability to help you feel what the characters are feeling, the way the actors portrayed their emotions was on another level, especially Ellie. Ellie is one of the best voiced characters of a video game I've ever played. Not only voice, facial capture, every single thing was incredible. So, final score of this game is a 10 plus out of 10. But now, I'm going to thoroughly talk about why and some of the things I changed my mind on after the first initial thoughts. So, first episode of this game starts. What a start, right? Everything's like, it's going good. Joel and Ellie are back. You can see they're going through some problems, but you don't know what those problems are, right? Then episode 2 happens. You get absolutely crushed, or at least me as a gamer got crushed. Joel is one of my favorite characters in a video game. Joel was incredible in the first game, and then they take Joel from you. But you know what? That fueled me for the rest of the game. I don't think I've ever been so immersed on the path of revenge. This game set me off. I was fired up. I was mad. I was frustrated. I almost stopped playing it. And that was the game's ability to draw me into the narrative and make me feel for that character. Then, Ellie and Dina, you go through the game. You find out Dina's pregnant, right? So you don't get to play as Dina with Dina very much, even though I really like that portion of the game. The open world portion of the game in Seattle was phenomenal. One of my favorite parts of the game. And then from that point on, all the way till episode 8 of my playthrough, this game got better and better and better. I don't think I've played a game in which after every mission, after every episode, I was like, that was my favorite mission. That was my favorite mission. I was on the path of revenge. Every elimination felt purposeful. Everything we did, we were doing it for Joe's revenge. Every choice I made was vengeance, resentment against Abby. I hated Abby. Then you get to part 8. Wow. Part 8. You finally get to the aquarium there. And then I stopped that episode. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did. I think that was a good place to stop. Then episode 9 came. And it hits you like a freight train. It hit me like a freight train. I'll be honest with you all. At that point, I didn't want to play the game anymore. And then we continued. We saw the story from Abby's perspective. Right when Ellie confronted, we finally had our confrontation. The fight was going to happen. We're at the climax, right? And then the game starts over basically, and you play as Abby. You see the flashback. You find out Abby's dad was the doctor that Joel had eliminated. And then you proceed to play as Abby, as a wolf. You meet the characters, Owen, Mel, Manny. You meet a lot of different characters. And at this point in the game, me as a gamer, I held so resentment towards Abby that I really didn't stop to appreciate or even try to relate with Abby as a character for the next 5 hours. Episode 8 and 9, I almost stopped playing the game. I almost stopped the playthrough. If it wasn't for this YouTube series, I might have stopped playing this video game. But then episode 10 happened. Episode 10, the hotel mission, up on top of the roofs with Lev. Fantastic. And then, although it was terrifying, and then we close out that mission with at the hospital in the basement fighting that boss. And I really started to feel for Abby, what she was going through. I really started to kind of see her redemption story. Then episode 11 happens. The island. Or wait, let's see. It might have been episode 11 where it was the hotel, right? And the rooftops. And then episode 12 was the island, right? And wow, episode 12 was amazing. And that's when I started to feel a little bit for Abby. But I'll be honest with you all. At that point in time, I still in the back of my mind thought that that portion of the game should not have been in there. And I believed that for a while. Like, why in the world are we playing as Abby? Get to the point, game. Get to the point. We played as Abby for 9 hours. And I kept thinking, can we please get to the point? But my resentment towards Abby, I feel like is what the game wanted me to feel. The reason I feel like the game had you play as Abby, because they knew the ending. I feel like the writers of the story wrote the end, wrote the Ellie portion, and they're like, okay, Ellie's gonna forgive Abby at the end, not get full revenge. But if we skip to that and don't give any backstory, gamers are gonna hate that ending, right? So I feel like then they added the Abby sections to the game. And without those Abby sections, without you seeing some of her character building, what she's been through, she went through a lot. You saw what she had been through. If I don't think if I would experience that, if we get to the end, that amazing final mission, if that had happened and Ellie let her go, I feel like I would have been very upset, and I feel like a lot of people would have been as well. And to me, that is the beauty of why they had the Abby portions of the game there. Although I would have loved to play as Ellie the entire game, with the way they wrote the story, I do feel like that portion of the game was needed. Because without it, I'm not sure I would be okay with the ending, to be honest with you all. Because I'm not, what I've learned about myself, apparently I'm not as good of a person as Ellie. Just think about it this way. Some of you might have missed this, some of you might have saw it. In that ending, Ellie's on her path to revenge, right? Ellie on her path to revenge, she knows nothing about Abby. Nothing about the past. She hasn't seen anything that we saw. Ellie has seen nothing. All she's seen is that Lev told Abby to stop killing Dina, and she did it. That's all she knows. So she goes on this path of revenge. And on her final path of revenge, she actually saves a lot of people, but also ends up saving the person who she came to kill for revenge. Ellie did not know anything that we saw, but she still, in the final moments, in that epic fight, that final conclusion, Ellie chose forgiveness over revenge in the final section. She finally realized at that point all the things she had done, and realized that that wasn't going to take away the pain. There's another person on the other side there who's been through a lot. I mean, you saw Abby. She was cut, bruised. She'd been tortured for months. She hadn't ate probably in months. Ellie finally realized that. And you all know the beauty of the storytelling for me. I'm going to be completely honest with you all. At that part in the story, when we got to that final fight, I still wanted revenge. And Ellie did too. But that's even after I saw what Ellie had been through. I saw the last 5 episodes. I still wanted my revenge. The beautiful part of that final scene is that when that scene happened, it almost was like I went through the same emotions that Ellie was going through. If you all watch back, the only words I said was when it started, "Here we go, come on." I didn't say a word the rest of the fight. In that fight, I went through so many emotions. Anger, resentment for Abby. All those punches, they meant something. And then, right as that final, when Ellie was going to get final revenge, that's when it finally hit me. At that moment, it hit me. Like, what am I doing? What have I become? What does this game cause me to do? What kind of a person am I? And I wanted to forgive Abby as well. What a beautiful written story. The theme of forgiveness is truly the only way to move forward. You don't know what that other person has went through. Ellie didn't know. We knew. I still knew, and I still wanted vengeance. Ellie did not know, and she still forgave her. Ellie is an incredible person. She made a lot of mistakes on her path to revenge. So did Abby. And Ellie paid the price. She did end up losing 2 fingers, and I wonder if that's going to serve as a reminder of Owen and Mel. The 2 people that Ellie's going to live with that for the rest of her life. What she did to Owen and what she did to Mel. And you wonder if that serves as a reminder that the path of revenge is going to pay a price. And Abby, look what she went through after the path of revenge. But at the end of the day, they both moved on. That is a beautiful narrative, a beautiful story with a wonderful theme. Now, I have to talk about episode 13 of my playthrough. This game, in those first 8 episodes of my playthrough, my main focus, my main drive, Ellie's main drive too, was revenge, right? Vengeance, resentment against Abby as a character because of what she did to Joe. Not only what she did to Joe, it's everything. It was brutal. The way she killed Joe was absolutely brutal. And then all I want is a fight. Episode 8 happens. Episode 9 starts of my playthrough. And we have the confrontation, right? And I'm ready at that point. So then it flashes away. We play as Abby for 9 hours. Although I've changed my mind on those sections of the game, when it's over and you get back to that confrontation scene, this is the mistake. I think the only mistake that this game made was this portion. I'm not convinced any gamer wanted to play as Abby at that portion of the game. I'm not convinced anybody. Maybe a few people. After it got to the same point in the story, it should have switched. I was so mad at Abby there because she tried to kill Ellie twice. I saw her kill Jesse again. I saw her, I thought I saw her kill Tommy, but she didn't end up killing Tommy. But I was so mad. I was infuriated. And then the game makes me play as the person I hate at that point in the story against the character I love dearly. And that's the climax of the story. That mission still goes down as probably my least favorite mission in a video game climax of all time. But how perfect the game was, it still goes on as one of my favorite games of all time. I think that it's the easiest solution to that mission. You switched to Ellie and you have a great fight. A great fight. Similar to the scene with David. I mean, they could have done a number of things. It could have been epic. But instead, you played as Abby. I was so mad. Go back and watch it. I went back and watched it before recording this. And I still had so much anger about that portion of the game. I don't know why they did that. I will never understand that. That was a big, in my opinion, that was the huge mistake that they made at that point in the story. Because if they would have had you Ellie there, and you lose the fight, right? They could have had it in the same way. The end of that fight was great. That was fine. It would have changed my mood for the whole rest of the game. It would have changed my mood completely. That, I'll never understand that. And I could talk about it forever. I'm still mad about that scene. That scene was the only set piece in the game that let me down. It was the only set piece that was not fun. It was boring. It was frustrating on so many levels. And it was, to me, pointless to play as Abby. Should have been back to Ellie. Because it switched to the flashback. It should have switched right back. That was my only main frustrating part, and I've thought about this a lot. I'm like, am I overthinking this? No. I went back and played it. I'm like, this is terrible. Like, I really hate that mission, and it is... I can't think of another game in the climax of the story that I've disliked a mission as much as I disliked that one. I didn't like anything about that whatsoever. So I have to give that criticism, but despite that, the narrative was so perfect. With that one mistake, the game was perfect. Graphics, 10 out of 10. Gameplay, 10 out of 10. Story, narrative, 10 out of 10. I'm convinced that the game knew the gamer was going to feel all those emotions. They knew how mad you would be at Abby through the Abby sections of the game. They knew that. They knew you would be mad. But they also knew the ending. And then the ending comes. And I think probably a lot of gamers maybe did not forgive Abby, right? Not everybody's going to get there. I got there. Ellie got there. But I bet some people didn't. But without that portion of the game, without feeling those emotions, that resentment, and finally realizing in the final moments of the game, when I went back and saw these missions and played these missions, I started to appreciate them more. I started to appreciate Abby as a character more and everything that she went through. And I was blinded by revenge, just like Ellie was. Isn't that perfect? People can give their criticisms of the game all they want to, but at the end of the day, their ability to make you feel those emotions was purposeful. Your resentment towards Abby was purposeful. They wanted you to go through those motions, but at the end of the day, they wanted you to arrive at forgiveness at the end. Perfection. Perfection. I mean, YouTube. I don't think there's ever been a game that I've finished and I can talk about it for how long have I been talking about it? This part is 20 minutes already. Okay. Hey, anybody still here? That is how perfect this game is. I can't say enough good about this video game. I can blast that one section of the game that I will forever probably be confused about and frustrated about. But that does not change the fact that this game is a storytelling masterpiece. Voice acting masterpiece. Gameplay masterpiece. Graphics. AI. Every single aspect of this video game was perfect. I experienced no bugs playing this game. No problems. Wow. All I can say is wow. And we can't leave without talking about Joel. Joe would be proud of Ellie. That final scene that it showed with Joel and Ellie. Did you all catch what Joel said? This is something I didn't mention in those first thoughts. He said, I would do it all over again. And you know what? I would too. Because Ellie's worth it. Ellie is important, and Ellie's life is important. I believe that Abby finally believes that Ellie's life is important. The dad made a mistake. You know, I said this earlier, and I think this is a perfect theme to describe that doctor. Jerry might have been great, but you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Jerry forgot that there was a patient on the other side of that, a 14-year-old patient, that he did not give Ellie a choice. Ellie would have said yes. Ellie would have said yes. They captured her, straight into surgery, ran a few tests, said, oh, let's find a cure. The doctor made a mistake, and he paid for his mistake. I can tell you one thing. I said this a couple times. If Joe was that doctor, he never would have had that surgery. He never. If he had never met Ellie, Ellie comes in, and they tell him that, I can tell you right now, Joe would have never made that decision. Joe was not perfect. He made a lot of mistakes, but he was better than Jerry at the end of the day. The doctor paid for his mistakes, and Abby may realize that one day. I think she did finally realize that, like, Ellie's important, and she's extremely important. They both made mistakes. Abby made a lot of mistakes. Ellie made a lot of mistakes. They did some brutal things. They did some terrible things. But at the end of the day, they were able to let it go. Maybe not let it go. You know, forgiving does not mean forgetting, right? They will never forget what happened. But they did forgive each other. What a beautiful scene. What a beautiful game. But that final scene as Joe and Ellie was perfect. And I feel like they had recorded that scene and they were trying to decide when to put it in the game. And then they were like, wow, let's put it here. So this game is a masterpiece. 10 out of 10. 10 plus out of 10. It's going to go down as one of my favorite game series of all time. And I feel like it's one of those games. You're either going to arrive at forgiveness with Ellie and forgive Abby, or you're going to hate the ending and hate Abby all the way through. There's going to be a lot of mixed feelings on this game with the way they told the story. And it wasn't until I took a step back that I really appreciated it. I appreciated it enough to come on here and record more of my final thoughts, because I don't think I gave the game the justice it deserved with how perfect the story was told. Everything was purposeful. One thing that I didn't mention a lot is I was blinded in the Abby sections of the game. I was blinded by vengeance and hate towards that character for what she did to Joe, right? Did you all notice what I missed? A lot of the places were places we visited before, such as that table where they had the surgery on Yara's arm. A lot of these things, they were Easter eggs of things you saw before. The sniper shots at that, remember the sniper shots? We were on the other side of that as Ellie, but completely on a different part of the map. There's so many Easter eggs in there and so much love put in to both of those scenes that I missed. I'll be honest with you all. I was upset. You all can go back and watch it. You all already knew how upset I was. But I feel like that's what the game wanted you to feel. I seriously think all these emotions that I went through playing this game, going in without spoilers, was the way that the writers of this story wanted you to feel. They wanted you to go through the sadness, the pain, the hate, the revenge, the resentment. And they also wanted you to appreciate the importance of forgiveness, even despite how terrible the act was. That final mission will go down as one of my favorites in a video game because of the way it concluded the story. That was an amazing final mission, and that final fight, I'm going to go back and watch that again because that was a powerful scene. That was a powerful scene. It shows the battle, the internal fight of good and darkness, light and darkness. Ellie battled with it. She was going to let him go, went to the other boat. She just couldn't do it. Then she put a knife up to Lev. Abby didn't want to fight. Not right now. She had been through terrible stuff. And Ellie can't get over it yet. They fight. They fight. Ellie wins. But then it hits her. And the light wins out in the end. What a beautiful story. What a beautiful theme. This game painted a zombie apocalypse or infected apocalypse, whatever you want to call it, probably the best I have ever seen. They painted the picture of how hard it is to see good and bad. What's good? What's bad in this world? Who's good? Who's bad? It's more of allegiances and whose side are you on? Who are your people? My person was Ellie and Joel, and I grew to love Dina. I loved Jesse. Tommy was on a path to revenge, and he never got to forgiveness. He never got to forgiveness like Ellie. So I still believe, even despite all the mistakes that Ellie made, and really all the bad stuff that she did, that she is still a really good person. At the end of the day, you know, when you take a look back and you think about the roller coaster of emotions that this game portrayed, and the first game, it was so emotional. Ellie has been through so much. And despite that, Ellie overall, in the end, made the decision to not get revenge. To, at that moment, she realized the other person on the other side. And although she didn't have the same information that we had about Abby's background, she realized what she had become, and she, in that moment, did forgive Abby and let her go. And I think that is a beautiful part of Ellie as a character. Now, keep in mind, I am very biased towards Ellie as a character because I love her. I mean, if you watch my playthrough, you all know how much I love Ellie as a character. You all know how much I loved Joel as a character. So there's always going to be a little bit of bias there for me towards Ellie. And one thing that's interesting, speaking on the subject of kind of good and bad characters, you know, at the end of the day, all the characters in this game, they were good at times, they were bad at times. You know, this game painted the picture that in an apocalyptic world, there's a very blurry line between good and bad, and characters make decisions that aren't necessarily the best. And on top of that, I think this is an important time to point out. So when I didn't read a lot of comments when I was playing through this series because I didn't want any spoilers, but I did read them later on, and upon looking back at the comments, it was so interesting to see your all's thoughts and also your all's frustrations. So the first 8 episodes, you all loved to see my reactions and see how fired up I was about the game. But then episode 9, 10, 11, and 12 turned a lot of you all off from the playthrough. There was a lot of heated comments and frustrated comments. When I went back to moderate and looked at the messages that were held for review, there was quite a bit of them. And that was when the series started to get a lot of dislikes on the channel. And I started to realize just how really this game gets people emotional, and it gets people upset sometimes with the way that you're feeling. And at the end of the day, I'm not upset at myself for feeling the way that I did in the game at that portion. I honestly believe that that is what the game wanted you to feel. Maybe the game wanted you to forgive Abby a little bit sooner than I did. You know, the theater scene, I was heated. I mean, you can go back and watch episode 13. And I don't think I've ever been that mad in a video game, but that's how emotional this game can get you. And yes, looking back at that scene in the theater, I realize that I gave Lev all the credit there. Do you all remember my rant on episode 13? I was like, no, Abby didn't do that. That was all Lev. Let's visit that for a second. And now that I'm not mad, yes, Lev did say stop. But this was the person, Ellie, who had just killed Abby's best friend and Abby's other friend. And not only a best friend, I mean, she was in love with Owen. This had just happened, right? This had just happened. And it didn't hit me until after the fact. Obviously, my emotions were high in this scene. I gave Lev all the credit, right? But you all know how much willpower that took and for Abby to yield to Dina, to yield to Ellie. And you all notice how powerful it was when Ellie said she's pregnant. And you know at that point in time, Abby thought about what Ellie had just done. Mel was pregnant too. Right? Mel was pregnant too. And at the end of the day, Abby yielded in that moment. And because of what Abby did to Joe, it's still really hard for me to say this. But at the end of the day, Abby was a good person. She was a good character. She went through a lot. And she was on the same path of revenge as Ellie. And I think most people in Abby's shoes would have made similar decisions and not yield to Ellie at that point in the game. And there was also more things that made Abby a good character as well. Because you all know what Abby did? Abby stepped in front of Lev. Lev had been through so much. She went back and saved Lev and Yara first. Keep in mind, those were her enemies for years. The Scars did terrible stuff to Abby. And Abby, her heart, you just can't let it go. Has to go help him. And then she steps in front of Lev. When her own people were going to kill her, she did not care. She was going to step in front of her enemy. Abby was, at the end of the day, she turned good. Although it's so frustrating what she did to Joe, she paid for those mistakes. She paid. Ellie paid for those mistakes. They both did. Right? They both paid. But the other good person of the story is Owen. Owen is one of those side characters who you don't play with. You never play as. You see him. But when he's there, he's a powerful character. Because Owen seemed to always be truly good. Did you all notice that? Besides when he did cheat on his, I don't know if Mel was his wife or girlfriend. He did do that. So that was not good. But he was good. He's the only reason that Ellie and Tommy lived, right? It was Owen. I hated that Owen had to die. So what an incredible video game. What an incredible video game. I'm going to pause the video and think of if there's anything that I missed. I know I've already talked for 30 minutes, but I think it's been a good talk. And I just realized I forgot to talk a lot about Dina. So if you watched my playthrough, you know how much I loved Dina. Honestly, her portions of the game that she was in, it was always impactful. It was always a great scene. And the relationship building between Ellie and Dina was exceptional. You could just see how much these characters grew to love each other. And honestly, how much they loved each other really from the beginning. I mean, Dina was ride or die. She dropped everything to help Ellie on this path of revenge. And almost died multiple times, saved Ellie multiple times. It was just such a beautiful dynamic between these two characters, and I am sad that at the end that one of the prices Ellie had to pay on her path to revenge was losing Dina. You know, that was something that we didn't see anything else on there at the end. I was hoping there was going to be an after credit scene, Ellie seeing Dina. But it's going to be interesting to see how they build on that on Last of Us Part 3. But Dina was just an exceptional character. Voice acting was amazing. She was amazing. And the scenes that they were in together, you could just see how much those characters really loved each other. And the chemistry was amazing. And I'm so glad Dina was in the game. I actually wish that Dina was in the game more, because the banter between Ellie and Dina in the sections of the game she was in was so good. Dina was such a funny character. She loved to joke and hit Ellie with puns at certain times, and you all know from the first game Ellie loves puns as well. That was just a really cool dynamic, and I wished we had more Ellie and Dina in this game. So whenever I think I'm done, I keep thinking of more stuff that I missed. So by the time I'm done with this video, I'm probably gonna have already edited it and exported it 20 times by the time I finally post this video. Okay, so I cannot finish this final thoughts video without talking about the beautiful flashback scenes that they put in this video game. So my favorite one was the flashback scene in the museum for Ellie's birthday. That was just an incredible scene from start to finish. It is one of those scenes that I just didn't want to leave. Like the banter between the two characters, just seeing them together again. Young Ellie, right after she had learned how to swim as well. That was one of the scenes that you first see that. But it was just an incredible scene. And then the part of that was in the space shuttle there. Wow, what a moment. I mean, that scene really brought tears to my eyes and brought so much joy. And then another flashback scene that really stood out to me is the one that I think all of us were waiting for. The scene in which Ellie finds out, she gets that recording and finds out what Joe did, and then confronts him about it, and Joel finally tells Ellie the truth. And it was just such an emotional scene. It was so well done, and it was put in the game at a perfect time in the story. These flashbacks were amazing. I am so glad that they incorporated these flashbacks, and it seemed like they always hit at the time in the game in which you really needed them. And they knocked it out of the park with that. And also, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the set pieces in this game, some of the combat moments that were so memorable. I mean, going back to the first time you faced the stalkers as Ellie, that was insane. It was terrifying. I was terrified that entire scene. And then you get through that, and then you meet the scars for the first time. You get the bow, and then you meet the scars. And wow, that was again terrifying. You basically become like the Green Arrow there. You're hiding in the tall grass. That was honestly one of my favorite parts of the game, the first time you faced the scars. And then moving on to one of my favorites in the game was that scene right when Jesse and Ellie went their separate ways. Jesse went to find Tommy, and Ellie went to get the boat to continue on towards Abby. And that scene when you're by yourselves going in and out of the water there was amazing. Honestly, there's so many parts I could say are my favorite combat sequences in the game. There's so many of them. I don't think I could pick a favorite, but this scene is definitely up there. And then, I mean, you feel like you feel like a James Bond type character, Ellie Bond, right? Ellie Bond just going out there like a special forces, just taking down every single one of them. That scene was insane. And then you get the boat, and there was that part when you get towards the end of the boat when there's those snipers, and then you fight those snipers in that building, and then you continue on. The boat part of this game was so well done, and wow, like honestly, I could say every one of Ellie's missions was a memorable moment, and there were so many incredible combat sequences. And then moving on to Abby, the most memorable to me was the sniping mission. That sniping mission was amazing. You know, I didn't know it was Tommy at first, and it finally hit me that it was. And that scene, moving down the highway, up to the bridge, into the building, chasing Tommy, hiding from the shots, fighting the infected, that was phenomenal. And then after that, of course, you have the island. Honestly, the entire island mission was one of my favorite parts of the games. I know I can't really pick a favorite part because there's so many of them, but that part was insane. I mean, from start to finish, and you get to fight both factions in an all-out battle, and then that scene on the horses to leave when you're shooting everybody off the horses and trying to get off the island, and then it finishes with that extremely gruesome fight, and then you get off the island and head to the aquarium. That was amazing. The set pieces in this game are on another level, and continuing to the end. When you take back, when you played as Abby for so long, right? And when it finally switches, do you all remember my excitement when it shows the boat and Ellie on the boat? I was so fired up. I did not want the game to end, and that whole final mission was a brilliant section of the game. So I guess I can go ahead and say is that all the combat sequences in this game were perfect, minus the first confrontation between Abby and Ellie. And then last but not least, the sound design was on another level. From the gunshots to the surfaces you're walking on, the infected sound, the ambient noises throughout, the weather, the music, everything was perfect. The attention to detail in not only the sound, but in the physics of the game, the character animations. When you walk over grass, the grass moving. When you're walking in the snow moving. When the rain, you can see the rain hitting the character and dripping off. The attention to detail was in every single part of this game. The game world, the characters, every single thing you could tell was carefully crafted to make the most immersive experience for the player. Wow, this game was truly perfect, and this game is truly on another level. So one thing I wanted to mention, I bet it was really entertaining for you all to watch me play this playthrough, because it was almost like two different people played this game, right? It was almost like I was two different people, because at one side, the revenge, and like I battled through loving the game and hating a game. I've never loved a game so much and hated a game so much at the same time throughout this emotional whirlwind of a story. And you all saw my frustrations. I did not hide anything. I did not cut out anything. You all know I wanted to cut out the 25 minutes of my first initial thoughts. I wanted to cut out that 15-minute rant after episode 13. But also, I think it's important to leave those in there because you all get to see the emotions I was going through. I felt like two different people playing the games. Like, I was sometimes happy, sometimes so mad. Sometimes I liked Abby, sometimes I hated her. Like, they did such an amazing job. They put us through everything, but it was purposeful. They had a reason, and wow. What a fantastic gaming experience, YouTube. Thank you all so much for experiencing this game with me. Let me know what you all thought about the game as well. Let me know what you all thought about my playthrough of it, the reactions. I greatly appreciate you all for all the support here, and thank you for experiencing this masterpiece of a video game together. I hope you enjoyed these final thoughts. That means that you have a 55-minute gamer ability podcast that you went through at the end of this video. Some of you might have skipped the first initial thoughts, but I do think it was important to keep those in there. I really do. Because I feel like it's important for you all to see how I felt at that time. But wow, what a perfect gaming experience. I cannot wait to play the third game. Now, I think it's important to see the future of this game, and I think I know what's gonna happen. Ellie, I feel like they're setting up that the fireflies that they found, Ellie's gonna find them, and she is going to let them do the surgery and save everybody. I feel like that's what they're leading up to in the finale. I feel like we unfortunately will lose Ellie in the next game. I feel like that is where it's leading. It's gonna happen. It is going to happen. So we will see. I cannot wait for part 3. I wish it was here now, but I bet it's going to be probably 5 or 6 more years. And you all know what I'm really sad about? Not having the multiplayer game. This game in a survival extraction-based shooter would have been incredible. I mentioned that a lot through my playthrough. It would have been perfect. It's the perfect environment and worlds. They already had built these amazing environments. The multiplayer game would have been incredible. It would have been probably the best survival extraction shooter of all time. And they canceled it. Maybe they'll bring it back. Please bring it back. Please don't let that game go to waste. It was already basically done. But thank you all for all the support. Watching this video to the end, all the support on the channel. If you got some enjoyment, drop a like. It really helps. Subscribe for more, and there are plenty of other playthroughs you can tune into here on the Gamerability YouTube channel. You have, of course, God of War Ragnarok, Wo Long, full playthroughs of those. Last of Us Part 1, if you want to go back and watch my Part 1 playthrough again. That game is a masterpiece. And then here, Part 2, what a masterpiece. And then other playthroughs as well. I highly recommend the Tekken 8 playthrough. That Tekken 8 story mode is so cool. Trust me, watch that. It is action-packed, it's short, and it is a blast. But I will see you all in the next video on the channel. I will be playing through No Return, the roguelite mode here, and we'll get to play hopefully more as Ellie, obviously, but as Joel as well. I want to play as Ellie and Joel. It'd be awesome to play as Joel again. I miss him dearly. What a legend that Joel was. But I will see you all in the next video. As always, have a fantastic day, everybody.